AITA for refusing to babysit when my parents asked because they wouldn't pay me. I guess I just need to get this off my chest. I've been feeling this way for a while, and after the latest incident, I decided it was time to share my story. I'm a 16-year-old guy, and I'm the oldest in my family. I have 3 younger siblings. A 12-year-old sister, we'll call her Emily, a 10-year-old brother, let's call him Jack, and a 7-year-old sister, let's call her Mia. Growing up as the oldest, I always understood that I had certain responsibilities, and I tried my best to live up to them. But lately, I've been feeling like I'm getting a pretty unfair deal. Let me explain why. I've always had a lot of chores around the house. I mean, I'm used to it. I make all the beds every morning, not just mine, but my 3 siblings' beds as well. I'm responsible for keeping the kids' living room tidy, which, trust me, is no small task considering my siblings treat it like their personal chaos zone. Twice a week, I do the laundry for the whole family. Yes, that includes sorting, washing, drying, folding, and putting it away. I also cook dinner for the family once a week, and every day I'm the one who cleans out my siblings' lunchboxes after school. These have been my chores for the past 5 years, and honestly, they're not easy. But that's not really what bothers me. What really gets to me is the way my parents handle chores for my younger siblings. See, my siblings have chores too, but their chores are way different from mine. Emily, my 12-year-old sister, makes sure the fridge always has bottled water in it. Jack, my 10-year-old brother, is in charge of starting the robo-vacuum. And Mia, my 7-year-old sister, has to carry the dishes to the sink after dinner for whoever washes up. That's it. Those are their chores. And for doing those chores, my siblings get paid $20 a week, each of them. Yeah, you read that right. My siblings each get $20 a week for doing one simple chore that takes maybe 5 minutes a day. Meanwhile, I'm over here doing the bulk of the housework and I get nothing. I don't get an allowance. I've never been paid a cent for any of the work I do around the house. And I've been doing these chores for years, while my siblings have only just recently started doing theirs. Naturally, I asked my parents about this. I mean, it's kind of hard not to feel like it's unfair. So I brought it up with them. Why do my siblings get paid for their chores when I don't get anything? Their response, it's your responsibility as the oldest. We shouldn't have to pay you to be a good brother and son. They made it sound like I was being selfish for even asking. They said that being the oldest meant I needed to set a good example for my siblings, and that meant doing my chores without expecting to be paid. I tried to argue that I wasn't asking to be paid just for the sake of it. I was just pointing out the double standard. But they wouldn't hear it. To them, it was simple. I'm the oldest, so I have to do more, and I shouldn't expect anything in return. I was frustrated, but I didn't know what else to do. So I let it go, at least for the time being. Then, a few months ago, I decided I needed to find a way to make some money. I wanted to save up for some things, just normal teenage stuff, like clothes, going out with friends, maybe buying a new gaming console. But since I wasn't getting an allowance, I decided to get a job. I ended up getting a part-time job at a local grocery store. It's not glamorous, but it's money, and it's mine. My parents weren't too thrilled when I told them I got a job. They said it would interfere with my responsibilities at home. I assured them it wouldn't. I'd still do my chores, but they might not always be done at the exact same time as before. Like, instead of cleaning out the lunchboxes right after my siblings got home from school on Fridays, I'd do it later, after my shift at work. And maybe the kid living room would be messy for a bit longer because I'd be at work while my siblings were making the mess. But I'd still get everything done, and I didn't see the problem with that. Well, apparently, my parents did. They didn't like that my chores were sometimes done at different times. They said I was slacking off and not being responsible. I tried to explain that I was still doing everything they asked me to do, just not always at the exact same time, but they wouldn't listen. They said I needed to figure out how to balance my job with my responsibilities at home, and that my siblings were still too young to help more, so it was on me. It was incredibly frustrating to be told that no matter how much I was doing, it wasn't enough just because I couldn't do it all at their convenience. I was trying so hard to balance everything. School, work, chores, trying to have a social life. It felt like I was being pulled in a million different directions, and none of it was good enough for my parents. They just wanted me to be at their beck and call, and any deviation from that was seen as me being irresponsible. I wanted to scream. It felt like nothing I did mattered, and I was never going to be able to please them. They kept reminding me that it was my responsibility, as the oldest, to set an example, but what kind of example was this? That it was okay to be treated unfairly and just accept it. That it was okay for others to get rewarded for doing the bare minimum while I did the bulk of the work for nothing. It made me start to resent my siblings, and I hate feeling that way. I know it's not their fault. They didn't ask for this, and they're just doing what they're told, just like I am. But it's hard not to feel bitter when they get $20 a week for doing something that takes a few minutes, while I'm spending hours every week on chores and getting absolutely nothing in return. I started to feel like my parents were just using me because I was the oldest and they could. They knew I wouldn't refuse, that I'd keep doing what they asked because that's what I'd always done, and they were taking advantage of that. I was frustrated, but I kept my job. I needed the money, and I was tired of not having anything of my own. I was tired of being dependent on my parents for everything when they clearly didn't value the work I was doing. Having my own money, even if it wasn't much, was empowering. It was a way for me to have some independence, to have something that was mine, and I wasn't going to give that up just because my parents didn't like it. And then came the final straw. A couple of weeks ago, my parents decided they wanted to go on an overnight date night. They asked me to babysit my siblings while they were gone. Now, I've babysat my siblings before, and I've never been paid for it. But now that I've been working and I know what my time is worth, I decided to ask my parents what they'd be paying me to babysit. I mean, it was an overnight stay, not just a few hours, but literally an entire evening, night, and morning. My parents looked at me like I'd just grown a second head. They said they weren't going to pay me anything, it was just another chore, and as the oldest, it was my responsibility. I told them that I wasn't going to babysit then. I'd only do it if they paid me. They tried to argue that they couldn't afford to pay me, and I said that was too bad, I wasn't going to do it for free. They called me a brat. They said I was being selfish and that they could make me babysit if they wanted to. I told them good luck with that, I'm 16, I have a job, and if they weren't going to pay me, I wasn't going to do it. I reminded them that they pay my siblings $20 a week to do a fraction of what I do, and I was tired of being screwed over. They said it was different because I was the oldest and I had responsibilities, but I told them that didn't mean I had to be their unpaid servant. Now they're mad at me. They ended up having to cancel their date night because I wouldn't babysit, and they're acting like it's all my fault. My mom keeps saying she's disappointed in me and that she thought I was better than this. My dad's been giving me the silent treatment. Even my siblings have been giving me crap about it. They don't understand why I wouldn't just babysit, and I guess from their perspective, it probably does seem like I'm being difficult, but I'm just so tired of it all. I'm tired of being the one who's expected to do everything without getting anything in return, while my siblings get paid for doing the bare minimum. I've tried talking to my friends about it, but they don't really get it. Most of them either don't have siblings or they're not the oldest, so they don't understand the pressure that comes with being the one everyone relies on. They think I should just suck it up and do what my parents want, but they're not the ones who are constantly being asked to sacrifice their time and energy without any kind of reward. They're not the ones who are treated like an unpaid servant just because they happen to be born first. I don't know, maybe I am being a brat. Maybe I should have just babysat and let it go. But I'm sick of always being the one who has to be responsible while everyone else gets off easy. I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it's right for my parents to expect me to do so much without any kind of reward or recognition, and honestly, I think I deserve better. It's not even just about the money, it's about feeling valued, feeling like the work I do is appreciated. It's about not feeling like I'm being taken advantage of just because I'm the oldest. My parents always say that family should help each other out, but it doesn't feel like I'm being helped out at all. It feels like I'm the one doing all the helping, and no one's willing to do anything for me in return, and that's not fair. So, yeah, that's my story. I guess I'm just wondering, am I the asshole here? Am I wrong for wanting to be treated fairly? For wanting to be paid for my time and effort, just like my siblings are? Or should I just suck it up and accept that this is my role as the oldest, and that's just the way it is? I honestly don't know anymore, but what I do know is that I'm tired. I'm tired of always being the one who has to be responsible, who has to sacrifice, who has to do everything without expecting anything in return. I'm tired of feeling like my parents don't appreciate what I do, like they just expect it because I'm the oldest and that's my role. I'm tired of feeling like I'm not allowed to want more, to want something for myself. And maybe that makes me selfish, maybe that makes me a brat, but I don't think it should. Update. The next week, Friday rolled around, and by that time, things had cooled down a bit in the house. My parents weren't giving me the silent treatment as heavily, and the passive-aggressive comments had dwindled. I thought we'd reached some kind of uneasy truce. Maybe they were starting to understand my perspective, or at least beginning to realize that what I was asking for wasn't outrageous. I was simply hoping for a weekend where I could just do my own thing, go to work, catch up on some homework, and maybe relax a bit. But, of course, that wasn't in the cards. After school, I went to work for a few hours at my part-time job at the grocery store. I got home around dinner time, and that's when my parents decided to drop another surprise on me. They told me that they'd be going out for a date night that evening and that I'd be babysitting my siblings. The request, or rather, demand came out of nowhere, and immediately, I felt that familiar wave of frustration and disappointment. I hadn't agreed to babysit, especially after the argument from the week before. I'd made it perfectly clear that if they wanted me to watch my siblings for extended periods, I expected to be compensated, just like anyone else they'd hire. I reminded them of this, saying I'd only babysit if they paid me. My mom just sighed and looked at me like I was being unreasonable, and my dad told me, "You will do it. You're not getting out of this, it's your duty." That word duty stung. To them, it was like I had no say in the matter, like I wasn't allowed to set boundaries or ask for anything in return for my time. I told them, as calmly as I could, that I wasn't going to do it for free. I was 16, I had a job, I was trying to be responsible in my own life, and that I wouldn't spend my evening watching my siblings while they got to go out and have a good time without at least some compensation. That's when they decided to escalate things even further. My mom rolled her eyes and my dad scoffed, and then he said something I hadn't expected. "If you think you're so grown up, maybe we should start charging you for living here. After all, adults pay rent and contribute to the household. Or maybe you could take on more chores instead if you feel like these are beneath you." He looked at me with this smug satisfaction, like he'd finally trapped me in some sort of logic. My blood was boiling. Charging me rent, that was something they'd never mentioned before, and I knew they didn't really mean it. They were just throwing it in my face to get me to back down. I told them that this was completely unfair, that they were just making things up to guilt-trip me into doing what they wanted. But they didn't seem to care. They laughed it off, almost as if this whole situation was some sort of joke. My dad said, "Well, you'll figure it out. We'll be back late. Make sure everyone's in bed." And with that, they left. I stood there for a moment, stunned. I could feel the frustration bubbling up, but I knew I was out of options. My parents had just up and left, assuming I'd cave like I always had. I was furious, I felt trapped, but more than that, I felt completely powerless. I knew that if I didn't watch my siblings, they'd be the ones to pay for it, not my parents. And deep down, I cared about them, even if I resented the situation. I didn't want them to be alone and scared, especially Mia, who's only 7. I ended up resigning myself to the situation, knowing that, once again, my parents had forced my hand. So, I spent the night watching my siblings. Jack and Emily didn't give me too much trouble. They could sense I was in a foul mood and mostly kept to themselves. Mia, though, needed help getting ready for bed, brushing her teeth, and reading a story before she'd go to sleep. After all that, I still had to clean up the kids' living room since my siblings had left it a disaster, and then I went through the usual routine of tidying up and making sure everything was in order. By the time I was done, it was late. I was exhausted, both physically and mentally, and all I wanted to do was crawl into bed and forget about everything. My parents finally came home in the early hours of the morning, laughing and talking quietly to each other. I could hear them as I lay in bed, wide awake and still stewing. I knew that I'd have to talk to them in the morning. I couldn't let this go without saying something. The next day, I decided to confront them. I explained that I'd watched my siblings like they'd asked, but since they'd gone out and essentially forced me into babysitting, I expected them to pay me the $20. I tried to stay calm and logical about it, making it clear that I wasn't asking for anything unreasonable. I just wanted what I deserved, especially since they were paying my siblings for chores that took a fraction of the time and effort. But they just laughed. They looked at each other, then back at me, and my dad said, "You're not getting paid for this. It's your duty as the oldest. You're responsible for them, whether we're here or not." And with that, they shrugged it off, as if what I was asking for was completely ridiculous. As if all the hours I'd spent keeping the household running didn't deserve even the slightest acknowledgement. I was stunned. I knew they'd been unfair before, but this was a new level. They weren't just ignoring my efforts, they were actively dismissing them. They weren't even willing to humor the idea that my time and energy were worth something. In their eyes, I was simply the oldest, and that meant I had no right to ask for anything in return. They weren't going to acknowledge that I had my own needs and boundaries. To them, I was just a tool, something they could use when it was convenient, then ignore when it wasn't. It was a wake-up call. I realized that no matter how much I tried to be responsible, to live up to their expectations, it would never be enough. I could work myself to the bone, take on every chore, babysit without complaint, and it still wouldn't change the way they viewed me. In their eyes, I would always be the one who had to make the sacrifices, while they could reward my siblings for doing the bare minimum. That moment was the final straw for me. I started to think seriously about my options, about what I could do to get some distance from this toxic dynamic. I didn't have a lot of money saved up, but my part-time job was giving me a small income, and I started to plan ways to increase my hours. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to find a way to become independent, maybe get more work over the summer, pick up extra shifts, whatever it took. I didn't want to feel like this forever. I didn't want to keep being the only one sacrificing, the only one whose time was taken for granted. My parents had shown me that they weren't going to change, that they didn't see me as an individual with my own needs and limits. To them, I was just the oldest, the one who'd keep everything going while they and my siblings reaped the benefits. And so, I decided that as soon as I had the means, I was going to start planning my own way out. I was done with being taken advantage of. I was done with doing everything for everyone else without getting anything in return. I wasn't going to wait for my parents to change or to see the error of their ways. I knew by now that they wouldn't. They didn't see anything wrong with how they were treating me, and nothing I could say would change that. "All right," I told them, struggling to keep my voice steady. "If that's how I'm just going to focus on my job and school. I won't be doing anything extra around here unless we can agree that my time is worth something." But they only laughed harder. "Sure," my mom said, waving me off with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You'll change your tune soon enough. You're the oldest, you know that comes with responsibilities." My dad nodded, clearly amused. "Yeah, just wait until you see how much work piles up. You'll come running back to keep things in order," he added with that same dismissive chuckle. Their laughter hit me like a punch to the gut, and I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and even embarrassment. They didn't see me as someone who deserved fair treatment or respect. To them, I was just the responsible one, someone they could rely on indefinitely, someone who'd never pushed back enough to actually disrupt the balance they'd grown comfortable with. They figured I'd buckle under the pressure, that I'd go back to taking on the lion's share of work around the house simply because it was what I'd always done. But something had changed in me. Their laughter stung, sure, but it also fueled a new kind of resolve. They might not take me seriously, but I was done letting that stop me. I'd keep my focus on my job, my studies, and my own goals. If they didn't value my time and effort, I'd start valuing it myself.